Here's a TMZ headline from last month. Furiosa and Garfield, 2 box office flops, worst Memorial Day return in years. And here's another one from IndieWire from a few weeks before. The Fall Guy box office disappointment hurts more than opening weekend. How many variations of these stories have we seen in the last, I was going to say few years, but it goes back even further than that. The COVID-19 pandemic did a lot of damage to the movie theater business, but we've heard about the impending death of movie theaters for a lot longer. It's not that there haven't been high-grossing films in recent years. There have been many, but there have also been indications that the habits of the movie-going public are changing, and this change is occurring on a trajectory that will eventually lead to the end of the movie industry, and specifically the movie theater industry as we know it. Owners of movie theaters have put quite a bit of thought and money into trying to prevent this change from taking place. Theaters in my area, and probably yours as well, have introduced reserved seating, have replaced the traditional auditorium-style seats with cushioned recliners, have expanded the menus at the concessions counter, all in an attempt to entice people to come to the theater to see movies instead of waiting for them to hit streaming services. They, along with the major movie studios, also embraced gimmicks like 3D, which made a comeback starting around 10 years ago, although it never really caught on and has mostly been abandoned by now. Is all of that going to be enough to save movie theaters? I mean, no. Not in the long term, anyway. Should that upset us? No. I get why it does. Honestly, it upsets me a little bit, the prospect of movie theaters going away. I have some wonderful memories of going to the movies. I know it sounds corny, but as an atheist, I've long regarded going to see a movie in a theater as a form of going to church. When people get all sentimental and romantic about the movies, about going to the movies, I understand what they're talking about. It makes sense to me. I know how they feel. Why do I say it shouldn't upset us then? Well, you know what else I used to love? Bookstores, music stores, video stores. They used to be such a big part of my life. Almost every weekend, once I was old enough and had money, I would go to the video store and rent a movie. Bookstores like Borders were where I went to get new books, including comics. Music stores like, okay, I'm going to take you way back now, Waxy Maxy, were where I got new music. Though in my teens and 20s, I mostly got my music from Borders because they sold music too. Those places and others like them are mostly gone now. And of course part of me misses them. They meant a lot to me. But do I feel a massive hole in my life because of their absence? No, I don't. Am I upset that they're gone? No, I'm not. Why? Because even though bookstores, music stores, and video stores are gone, I can still get books, music, and movies. And the ways in which I get those things now, the ways that replaced bookstores, music stores, and video stores, they're better. If there's a book I want to read, I can order it from one of any number of online retailers. I can probably buy or rent or borrow a copy of it for my Kindle and be able to read it in a matter of moments. I listen to music as much as I ever did, old music and new music, via streaming. I watch movies through various streaming services as well. Sometimes they're included with my subscription. Sometimes I pay a few bucks to rent them. Either way, it just takes a few presses of buttons on my remote or clicks on my computer or taps on my phone, and I'm watching the movie. And I get the romance of the old ways. Like I said, I love bookstores. I love music stores and video stores. I love movie theaters. But the main reason why I love them is because I love books and music and movies. And the way we consume movies now, through the internet, through streaming, speaking purely as a consumer, as a member of the audience, it's just obviously better. Almost any book I want to read, I can be reading it within a few minutes. Any song I want to hear, any movie or TV show I want to watch, I can get it anytime without even having to leave the couch. Rentals don't have to be returned. There are no late fees. Hell, on most streaming services, I can pay a few extra bucks a month and not even have to sit through commercials. It's just better. That's why movie theater attendance is in decline. That's why we keep getting these alarmist headlines about disappointing box office numbers. Hell, that's why I've been to a movie theater to see a movie exactly 3 times since the pandemic, and I have no idea when the next time will be. That's why streaming is taking such a bite out of the audience of traditional broadcast and cable television, because being able to watch what you want, when you want, on your schedule, on demand, and without commercials, if you pay a little extra, is better than how we used to do it. My God, when I was a kid, if there was something on TV that you wanted to watch, you had to watch it when it was on. And if you missed it, you had no idea when it would be rerun, or even if it would be rerun. You might never see it again. I know sometimes I joke about how old I am, but I'm only 44. When I say when I was a kid, I'm talking about the 1980s and 90s, not the 50s and 60s. And yet, the way we watch TV has changed so much since I was a kid. When I was a kid hurrying home from elementary school so I wouldn't miss He-Man, if you had told me that within a few decades I'd be able to watch any episode of He-Man I wanted, at any time I wanted, along with any episode of thousands of other TV shows and almost any movie I've ever heard of, it would have seemed too good to be true. It was totally beyond my experience. Now, I take it so much for granted that if the internet goes out, as happens every once in a while, and I can't watch any episode of anything that comes to mind at any given moment, I get kind of cranky about it. How easy it is to forget. How incredible things are now compared to how they used to be. And that's just within my lifetime. The way we do it now is clearly better than the way we did it then. There's a level of discomfort that a lot of us naturally feel about new technology or new ways of doing things. That's understandable to a degree. We get used to things being a certain way, working a certain way, and we don't want them to change or feel like they need to change. I'm not immune to that sort of thing myself. But change is inevitable. And I think one of the reasons for that, specifically the kinds of change I'm talking about here, is that usually change is an improvement. Going to the movies can be a beautiful, romantic, rewarding experience. Sure, it can. Sitting in the dark in a room full of strangers, everyone staring up at the same screen, the beguiling optical illusion of motion, whether it's accomplished by film frames being projected 24 times a second or pixels racing from side to side and top to bottom faster than the eye can see. Munching popcorn, sipping soda, having to get up to go to the bathroom and then coming back and whispering to the person you came with to ask what you missed. It can be a beautiful thing. It can also be a huge pain in the ass. Standing in line to get that popcorn and soda, listening to some of those strangers in the dark as they talk through the movie, or maybe there's a kid that won't stop fidgeting or a baby that won't stop crying. You have to sit through half an hour of commercials and then another half an hour of coming attractions before the movie you paid to see even starts. And by the way, you paid through the fucking nose for that ticket and that popcorn and that soda. Going to see a movie by yourself can be expensive. And if you pay for a friend or a date or your spouse and kids to come along with you, it can wind up costing a small fortune and become so exhausting that by the end of it, you might wish you just stayed home and watched something on Netflix or Disney Plus. And who could blame you? I'm not saying these kinds of changes are 100% good. There are causes for concern that we need to be aware of and ideally do something to address eventually. Allowing streaming services to become the primary keepers and purveyors of films and television series can be disastrous from a cultural perspective if the owners of those streaming services decide there's more profit to be made from withdrawing or even erasing certain titles than from keeping them publicly accessible. Since Warner Brothers merged with Discovery, the Max streaming service has become notorious for not merely pulling content down, but for canceling the release of finished projects in order to claim tax benefits. That's why, despite the convenience of on-demand streaming, if there's a show or movie you really love, it's still a good idea to have a physical copy if possible. Like I did with the original King Kong vs. Godzilla. It's not as if David Zaslav is going to send people to your house to confiscate your Blu-rays. Probably. They'll never take you from me. Business people with no interest in or sense of art controlling the fate of that art has always been a problem, but the shift towards streaming carries the danger of making that problem worse than ever. Another modern convenience, innovated relatively recently with a dark side, is the food delivery app. Services like Grubhub or DoorDash or Instacart can be a godsend if you're hungry and unable or unwilling to go out to a restaurant or grocery store. But they're notoriously stingy when it comes to compensating their delivery drivers, and they've been known to engage in unfair practices with the restaurants that prepare the food as well. Not to mention, there are economic barriers inherent to all of these things I've been talking about. Getting books and movies and music on demand through streaming is great. Having food brought to your door through a delivery app is great, if you can afford it. Granted, that's not so much a problem with streaming services or delivery apps themselves. It's more of a broad social problem that we need to address. But still, there was a time in my life, not all that long ago, really, when I was sure I would never prefer an ebook to a physical paper volume, when I'd never prefer streaming music to putting on a CD, or if I was feeling especially hipsterish, a record, when I'd never prefer renting a movie digitally through my TV to going to a video store and browsing the aisles, or going to a movie theater. Know what changed my mind? I got my first Kindle tablet. I rented my first movie through Amazon Prime, subscribed to my first on-demand streaming service, listened to my first digitally delivered music. I tried the new way once and realized the same thing people living at the turn of the last century who were used to traveling by horse-drawn carriage realized the first time they rode in an automobile. Oh, the way we've been doing this isn't going to be the way we do this for very much longer. Because despite some undeniable but hopefully not insurmountable drawbacks, the new way is better. And here's something important to remember. The thing being replaced isn't going to vanish entirely. There are probably always going to be movie theaters. It's just that eventually they won't be the main way we see new movies. They'll be more of a niche thing. Shit, horse-drawn carriages didn't completely go away. You can still take a ride in a horse-drawn carriage in certain places, on certain occasions. But in most of the world, it's no longer the primary means of transportation. And when it comes to art, whether books are printed on paper or delivered to us digitally on handheld devices, writing will always exist. Whether movies are projected on big screens and auditoriums full of people or streamed to our TVs or computers, movies will still exist. Just as music will always exist, just as live theater will always exist, the popular ways of consuming or distributing them may change and force them to evolve and adapt from time to time, but the essential art forms will endure and be with us as long as we are here to create and enjoy them. Times change, usually for the better, almost always for the better in the long run. Change can be scary, especially in the short term. We can give in to our fear of it or think of ways to artificially delay it, but maybe a better use of our energy would be to try and make the new ways that will replace the old ways as sustainable and accessible as they can be. Rather than vainly cling to the familiar, comfortable past, let's build a better future instead.